and I don't know that I would call it an improvement. Let's put it that way. I mean, it felt the same or worse, I guess, is, you know, the thing that I came up with. Yeah, it's like you were just getting used to something. I mean, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how realistic it is, as long as you learn to master it, you know? Yeah. Right. But yeah, it didn't really seem like it became more stable, which is what I was hoping would happen, because it's way too squirrely in my opinion. All right. So I guess they were just doing hover checks, so you could maybe ask for the ground taxi. Okay, cool. Yep. Yep, and that's yeah, just nice and gradual. And there's mine work as well. And then you still got a tail wheel lock. Oh, there we go, on lock. All right, good. Yep. So you just left it on for the brake check. That's pretty good, yeah. Which, I mean, in real life, not really something that you have to, but as squirrely as these pedals are, that's probably the best way to do it. So, good call. Yep. So as you taxi, so you see how your velocity vector went off to the side. That's fine because you're gonna turn. And then, when you're taxiing forward, ideally you're keeping that guy like straight, like that, like right there. And that's why, you know, taxiing with the hover symbology is useful, because it keeps you at a comfortable speed. Anything faster than this, especially as squirrely as this thing is, like in real life you could have gotten away with higher speeds, but as squirrely as this thing is, there's really no point to going faster than this and ending up twisting yourself into a pretzel, you know? So yeah, and as you can see, like your airframe, like the frame of the aircraft, helps you make sure that you have a neutral sort of attitude, you know, as far as with the ground, you know, that your rotor is like parallel to the ground. And then velocity vector tells you that when it's straight, you know that your nose and your tail are crossing the same piece of real estate, you know. And then in a turn, it kind of tells you which way the aircraft wants to lean. So then it kind of tells you, okay, if I need to adjust or correct anything, then in this case you would be bringing left side click if you had to bring anything at all, right? Because you can see that the aircraft wants to lean right, and that's all provided by the INU. You know, that's the INU telling you, like, sort of you know, the way that things are moving in accordance with the gyroscope, you know, like. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you're doing a great job, actually. Like this little porpoising left to right, I would say right now it's pretty sort of required. Like, you could probably get rid of it by putting a hell of a lot of a curvature on your pedals, but it would you know, like then it would be almost unflyable. So just food for thought. All right, they're still over there. So since we're doing ground taxi, there's something that I sort of something to show. So if you've looked at the books, you know that the Apache is not restricted from rearward taxi. Now, typically, this is something that we would have done with a crew chief standing in the front, you know, so they're sort of your eyes, because obviously you can't see into the back. You know, this being DCS, there may be situations where rear taxi might be beneficial, you know, and so the way you do it is, you know, it's simple enough. So, you know, you unlock your tail wheel, and then you just sort of apply a little bit of pedal, not much, just a little bit, because what you have to do is you got to rotate your tail wheel 180 degrees in order to rearward taxi. So I would probably announce intentions, you know, jolly pad, practice rearward taxi, and so those guys see you and they don't wonder what the hell we're doing. And yeah, just do it once. There's this like moment where when that wheel is shifting from being sort of aligned forward to sort of reversing 180 degrees, where it does like a shimmy. So it, you know, it's good to sort of do it and experience it in a controlled environment when you don't actually need to do it, so that whenever you need to do it later, and it's, you know, it's part of the ground taxi curriculum. So let's just check it off. And yep. Yep. Yeah, just add a little bit of, and there it goes right there. See, that's the shimmy. Yep. And now if you want to stop and go to the outside view, I don't know if you can do that. You'll see that the tail wheel is completely rotated. And so now let's fix it.
So Dragon 1 at the Jolly Ram practicing ground taxi.
So now you're gonna push forward, and you just got to do the same thing. Just add a little bit of pedal in either direction. It doesn't matter. You're just trying to help it, and there it is. And now that tail wheel should be straight again. And you could select lock, and yep, and there it is. And that's, you know, it seems like a minor item, but it's good to sort of experience it in a controlled sort of way. All right. Yeah. Exactly. All right. So before takeoff, weapons are safe. Ground overrides off. Tail wheel button is locked. Parking brake is released. Power levers got 1 and 2 to fly. MP's at 101. Rotors at 101. Field page options. We really don't have many options. I think we can start a field check. Is about the only thing we can do in the field page right now, right? And engine and flight instruments all within normal ranges. ACE not required. Avionics are set. Our transponder, like we said, can't really change it, so squawking VFR. We set up our comms, and for nav we're messing around with the iNews, and then we're up to power check. So you can so winds, you know, we're 199. So you know, you would sort of check your power with like the best circumstances, you know, unless yeah, because you want to see what your best case scenario is. But then, like, if you ended up in a situation where no, you have to take off straight ahead, then your hover power check would have to sort of be straight ahead, because, but like for example, coming off this pad in the real world, I could do my hover power check into the wind, and then call tower and request, you know, Nellis Tower, Dragon 2-1, Jolly Pad, request present position takeoff to the, you know, to the north, and you know, and that's how helicopters usually get away from airfields, is, you know, present position and get the hell away from the runways, because they don't want to deal with you, you know, and they don't have to deal with you because helicopters are awesome that way, you know. So so yeah, so you know, I would say, you know, this is the hover practice part. I would kind of, this is where I would sort of bring in some of the aerodynamic stuff. So like for example, you know, what what are some of the phenomena that you're going to experience as you come up to a hover. So like, so you know you're going to experience torque, torque reaction, right? Like you're going to have to adjust with pedals, pressure, counter pressure to keep the nose pointed forward. If you don't correct for translating tendency, the aircraft's going to start sliding right because of the thrust of the tail rotor. So that sort of thing. That's what I meant earlier, that when folks have done their full aerodynamic stuff, I'll just throw, the intent is to sprinkle in some of those questions like that. Yeah, exactly. Instead of because you will have done done already the homework on your own, and then we're just sort of using it as talking points. So yeah, I think I would just come up to a hover now for you. Make sure you. Oh, another thing that I got in my notes here to bring up is, are you using the controls indicator? Like, do you have a sweet spot that you've sort of come up with that seems to work for you coming up to a hover every time, Okay, yeah, I mean, so, and in real life, I treat the controls indicator as, in real life, I had little spots where I would put the cyclic, and I knew that, you know what I'm saying, like they were ballparks for what I needed the aircraft to do, and so that's what I sort of see the controls indicator as. It's basically like that eyeball spot for your cyclic in real life. But yeah, I mean, I know Nomad flies off of pressure, so you might just be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas in real life, you can sort of put it in the same spot visually, with reference to the pedals or something, or the dash, whatever, So I just bring it up as a technique that you can add to your repertoire. So yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can't hold it. And maybe let's just do the power check and get out of these guys' way, and we can talk about it over at golf. Because there's I would call for power checks like they did, like Nellis Tower, Jolly Pad, power checks, and then you can just stay at a hover and request air taxi to golf ramp, crossing 2-1 left, 2-1 right, All right. Roger. Yeah. There you go. And yeah, you're looking good. 5 feet. Within 10 degrees, and it's holding 60% torque pretty stable. So that's obviously our hover power right now. It was probably like 62 or something earlier, but we burned off some fuel. So cool. So then you can like sort of center yourself back up, stay at the hover, and you know, and I'm making you do this intentionally. Now I can get this call if you want, so that you can focus on the hover. It's up to you. Yeah, absolutely. So let me switch. Dallas Tower, Dragon 2-1 at the Jolly Pad. Request air taxi to Golf Taxiway. Crossing 2-1 right, 2-1 left. And I guess it's not a request really, so it's an announcement. Yeah, I can't get rid of it. Yeah, just don't fly over any aircraft, you know. Obviously you can't overfly them by more than 200 feet because air taxi's below 100 feet. And yeah. Yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah, I would once you're past the Blackhawks, then just kind of beeline it to Golf, and you know that's the beauty of air taxiing. Is like, you know, it's like helicopters do helicopter shit, right? Like, you know, it's like, so because the alternative is ground. This is Dragon 2-1, and then they have to look at their board to give you, you know, but yeah, you don't have to even, you can just beeline straight to Golf. Like, you don't have to follow the pavement or anything. You know, air taxi is, yep. So yeah, so you're actually helping them out. Like, you know, if you're a tower operator, you love helicopters. Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so they love you when you do stuff like that. When helicopters actively stay out of the way, like, you know, which is kind of counterintuitive because a lot of new pilots, helicopter pilots and stuff, want to practice shit, you know. So it's kind of like this push-pull of like getting training versus, you know, like keeping the airfield and the controllers happy. Cool. So we got some F-16s on the left here.
I'll Dragon 1 and Jelly ramp taxi to the Jelly Pad for departure to the north.
Alright, so we can hear, I would say, things that are still left to practice on hovering flight. You can put it on the ground if you want to listen or whatever. So I'm just going to talk about something real quick. So now let's think about hover taxiing. Let's say you're going nice and slow, like really slow, you know, like not saturated the hover taxi symbology at all. And let me get INU reset going while we talk. Okay, perfect. So you want to, so like let's say you're gonna decelerate, like, oh shit, there's something in the taxiway and I gotta stop. If you're going slow, you're gonna want to lead with collective, because if you pull back on the stick and you're going slow, your attitude is pretty tail low as it is, and you're likely to bounce the tail off the back, which is not a big deal, but you know, if you can avoid it, you know, the stress to the airframe, that's preferable. So if you have to do like a quick stop as you're moving forward at a slow airspeed, little bit of collective, and then decelerate, and then get back down to your altitude, you know, like your 5 feet or whatever. If you are going a little quicker, like let's just separate it between hover symbology saturated versus unsaturated. If your hover symbology is saturated, then what's going to happen is you're going to apply a little bit of aft cyclic. You never want to, you know, sort of slam it in, obviously, you know, like smoothly. And then you don't have to worry too much about the tailwheel because you have enough forward airspeed that the aircraft is going to do like a cyclic climb. A very small, but yet real cyclic climb. And so then in that scenario, you're actually going to reduce a little bit of collective, right? Because you don't want it to climb and get out of, get past, like a reasonable sort of altitude deviation. And then immediately you're going to bring it back in because by the time you take it out, you're going to sort of decelerate and you're going to be coming back to a hover at 5 feet. And it's just like a coordinate. They're both sort of coordination moves. What the collective that you're adding in slow airspeed is going to be sort of like a hair. Same thing for the collective you're taking out at the faster airspeed. But it's just something to practice. We got a nice straight shot here. We can, sort of practice that real quick and get some experience with the maneuver. Yeah, just kind of like let's get going and don't let your hover symbology saturate, and then I'll say, come to a stop, and then just remember you're gonna lead with a little bit of collective, aft cyclic, and then just decelerate. It doesn't have to stop. When I say stop, it doesn't mean that you're gonna stop instantly, right? If you're ever in a situation where you have to stop instantly, there's no way to stop instantly. So what you do is you just pull power and get up and out of whatever obstacle is in front of you. Does that, you know what I mean? Because like stopping a helicopter on a dime is just not when you can, if something creeps up in front of you, you can just as easily hop over it, and that'll be a lot safer than if you aft cyclic it, and then you're likely to go past what you need, so then you start drifting backwards and it just, a simple situation gets out of control, so when I say stop, I don't intend you to stop instantly. It's just initiate your stop, you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, because if something is coming in front of you, you're going to see it with some level of, we're not talking sort of gophers popping out of the taxiways, so yeah, it's just the coordination movement that'll come in handy. It's good to practice, and it's part of the sort of the hover taxi sort of consideration stuff. So yeah, let's just ask for the length of golf for hover taxi practice or something. That'll be good enough. Perfect. Yep. Yeah, that's what I noticed when I was doing my price. See how it seems like the left wheel low is like a little more aggressive than it was before when you come up to a hover. Because that was a pretty sharp movement, when your wheels came up. Like, and it's not you, because I did it earlier and I looked at it and I was like, oh, that feels different. Yeah. So just get some sort of kind of your hover taxiing down golf, and go ahead and stop. See, you sort of added a little bit of power, kept your tail off the ground, and then but then it seems like you took, so since you added power, you kind of took it away, and see, now we're down kind of like at 3 feet. Yeah, which is why we do this, because it's a coordination maneuver, So now sort of get moving at a quicker rate, like sort of past where it saturates, and the little donut comes back to the center. And remember, here, you're gonna cyclic smoothly, and then take a little bit out and put it right back in. So go ahead and stop. Yeah, no, but it all balanced out pretty good. There you go. Yeah, and those look great. I think it's something you can practice on your own, and it's good coordination maneuver. Taking a little bit of this, adding a little bit of that, and then you gotta add. You gotta keep your pedals straight. So yeah. So that's kind of like the point of that sort of exercise. And then we already did air taxi, and really air taxi has no considerations other than there's a max altitude and safe operating airspeed, and that's about all you got to worry about. And then you're just going point to point. So if you add, like, let's say we had asked Jolly Pad for some specific intersection, then you just go point to point, to that specific intersection, and straight line distance. And let's see, let me check my notes on ground taxiing and hover. All right. And then something aerodynamics that that is good to bring up, and it probably takes a while, is like so like we're in a nice stable hover right now. We know we have a wind coming from the front hemisphere at about 6 knots, but imagine the aircraft was pointed in the exact opposite direction, and actually we can practice pointing the aircraft to the north for the hover taxi practice. And so you're hovering right now 58% torque. Go ahead and give us a 180 degree turn, and let's look at our torque with a tailwind. Alright, so get it nice and stable, and as you can see, it's right where it was, right? So like it's still 58% torque, and it seems kind of silly for me to bring it up, but like the reason why I say it is, so you're gonna hear that, well, you don't want to land downwind because your performance decreases, and that is true. But it's not sometimes for the reasons people think it is. Right now, this helicopter is hovering with a headwind, if that makes sense. Because it doesn't know where the wind is coming from, right? Like, you could make an argument for like, well, the tail rotor is going to disrupt a little bit of the airflow. Fine, I'll give you that. But, for the thought exercise, it's basically hovering as well as it would hover in any direction. If you put it sideways, it would still be hovering, because the aircraft doesn't know what's a headwind and what's a tailwind until it starts moving, right? And yeah, exactly. It has no clue which way. Now, when we start moving, if we started moving in this direction that we're in, we would create like this weird situation, and you can follow along. So basically, right now we have 10 knots or 6 knots, I should say, of wind speed that are helping us, right? But then now we're accelerating forward, and we are bleeding those 6 knots away. And then now we're past 6 knots, and now we're starting to add them back up. So if you're doing it over the ground, like we're doing right now, you're probably not going to see much of a difference. But if you were sort of taking off on a standard VMC takeoff, you would end up in a situation where you had performance from the wind that was helping you, and then right at about the 20 or 30 foot mark, you've bled it off, and now you have nothing, and now you're trying to regain it, and so you basically end up putting yourself in it's sort of losing your performance advantage from the wind in the most critical phase, which is that sort of 0 to 50 foot and 0 to 50 knot window, which is the most sort of unforgiving for loss of an engine or both engines, because you don't have enough altitude and you don't have enough airspeed to do anything to sort of save yourself, so you're just gonna, but you're high enough that the aircraft is gonna hit the ground pretty damn hard. So anyway, that's what it seems sort of kind of silly, like there's no big punchline there, but just understanding that the reason why we lose performance in downwind approaches taking off is because we had a benefit, then we have to bleed it off and regain it, instead of just, if we take off into the wind, we have that benefit and it only gets better. And that's sort of on takeoff where that's relevant. So pretty much hovering flight. So IGE versus OGE, looking at about, depending on the reference, so like if you look at the manual, it says 80 feet, right? So that's the Apache manual defines OGE at 80 feet. Some places you'll see it says 1 rotor disc. Others you might see rotor disc and a quarter. But basically, just close to 80 feet, you can start expecting to, if you're climbing, then you can start expecting higher power requirements. And if you're descending, then as you get to close to 80 feet, you can start expecting, performance improvement. And so that's sort of where the IGE OGE line is for us. And like if we're gonna move to takeoff now, and make sure you keep track of time for yourself. Let me know if we need to call it a day. Yep. So takeoff. So yeah. So that was pretty much everything that I feel like we needed to cover on hovering taxi and hovering flight. Your control touch is good. I have no question you'll get signed off for that task. So yeah, it's pretty obvious you've been practicing, and your control touch shows it. So good job on that. Yeah. No, it's awesome. So I've been talking this whole time, sort of seeing, and you've been holding it there like a pro. So yeah, we got, just I would say probably practice like hovering turns. Those get everybody, So I'm not saying just you, and the little, so the perfect hovering turn has the velocity vector at the 90-degree mark, like that's the ideal one, right? That's the one that lets you, because the velocity vector is going to displace when you do a hovering turn, because the INU is on the nose of the aircraft, or it's not in the very center. If the INU was perfectly centered under the hub, you would see no drift. So yeah, no. So if you do that, you're actually gonna sort of make a small circle on the ground. So when you start displacing your pedals, the donut is gonna shift in the opposite direction, and that's correct. You know what I mean? because the INU is experiencing a lateral movement. If the INU sensor was directly under the hub, then yeah, you could just keep the donut in the center and you would do a perfect pedal turn. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But yeah, those get everybody, so those are always good to practice. Sort of, and you can even do like a bob-up box, and then do a pedal turn and see how sort of how close you can stay. It's it's just little techniques to get better. Obviously, the standard isn't that, but it can help you see you're not drifting, but the velocity vector is off to the left, and that's correct, so that's fine.
Dragon War, Jolly pad, take it off to the north.
And cool. So yeah, so I would just say keep, so your stationary hovers are great. Transitions to a hover, you had no problem transitioning from forward airspeed to hovering flight, so that's good. Now, so since you got the hover, the bob-up box up, let's develop a drift in some direction and then arrest it. I'm just curious to see how. So just get a drift going intentionally, and then fix it. I'm just curious. Okay, very good. So based on what I'm seeing, you're sort of stopping the drift, and then now you're gonna sort of work your way back over to the box, right? Yep, exactly. Perfect. Yep. Because you'll see some folks want to do it all at once, and you can do it, you can develop enough skill to do it, but especially when this thing is so squirrely, what you did there is what I would say is the preferred. So stop the drift, then move backwards. Perfect. All right, cool. So yeah, that's pretty much all I need to see for hover taxiing and for hovering flight, honestly. So we can set ourselves up now for, and you can do the first one, VMC takeoff from a hover, if you'd like. And, so left traffic to golf, avoid aircraft, all that good stuff. And so you read the, so there's 4 ways of doing this particular maneuver. So we have, VMC takeoff from a hover, standard VMC takeoff from a hover, standard VMC takeoff from the ground. Then we have, which both of those are, remember the torque value for those? Well, not an exact number. It was more like, so if you look at the task, it'll tell you 10% over torque, right? So I mean, it's close. 70 is probably a good number. Yeah, right. So it's whatever hover torque is plus 10% is what we use for normal VMC, takeoff. So so here you're gonna sort of pull 67, and then it's a coordination maneuver, right? So you're gonna bring in the power, but you want to start nosing over, but not too aggressively, because you gotta let that power sort of actually start building that cushion below you. And yes, in an ideal world, your altitude and your airspeed are sort of tracking close to each other. So yeah, in a perfect world, you would get to 50 feet and you'd be doing 50 knots, and that's, again, because you're trying to stay out of that height velocity avoid range. But I would say don't chase it to the point that you're nosing over past 10 degrees. So, and so you're at a hover. So, so you're going to basically stay in hover mode. You're going to saturate, then you're going to switch to transition, which will give you a good sort of, like horizon reference. And then you can play with that to, to keep that 10 degrees nose low. But I would say you don't start 10 degrees nose low, you know what I mean? Like you sort of, those first 10, 20 feet, 10, 20 knots, you're getting to 10 degrees nose low. Because if you immediately go to 10 degrees nose low, it'll be way too aggressive of a maneuver. You know, keep your flight page handy so you can kind of see it before you get your transition symbology up. And yeah, so this will be, you know, VMC, standard VMC takeoff from a hover. You know, once we'll just use 400 feet as our turning, you know, like sort of diverse departure standards. So once you get to 400 feet AGL, or I guess, you know, if you want to go off the MSL, you know, like somewhere around 2250 or so, you know, make your left turn then, your crosswind. You know, you can do nice, like 90-degree turns. We can do big patterns to practice, you know, and then you know, you get to downwind, and then, you know, we'll set up for base. But let's just, instead of, since we got this super long taxiway,
Dragon 1, 5 flights.
since we have this super long taxiway, like, let's just practice takeoffs. So basically you're just gonna kind of practice your takeoff and then just begin a slow descent back down, you know, with some forward airspeed, and we'll just kind of do these little hops to practice sort of the attitude transition that we just talked about, the airspeed control, the altitude control, all that. And we did that in flight school, and I thought it was beneficial because you basically get multiple cracks at the apple before we start doing full traffic patterns, where you do one and then you gotta wait, you know, like 3-4 minutes till you land and then do another one. Yeah, just imagine you're doing like a sawtooth pattern, you know what I mean? And then when you're coming back down, you know, you can make it nice and shallow. You don't stress about you know, getting back down on a steep angle. Just, you know, we could probably get 3 or 4 in the length of this taxiway. So let me do another update here. All right, so that's set. So, you know, I would say like Nellis, you know, taxiway golf, high hover work along taxiway golf or something like that. And that's, you know, because basically we're going to be coming up in altitude and coming back down. Like hover work below 200 feet, and, you know, that's a good call, good advisory call for those guys. All right, yep. And there you go, so they're nice and smooth. Okay, so you're saturated. There you go, transition, and you're looking down at your flight page to make sure you're not sort of going too far below. And if you see like the top of the cross level with and there you go. Now start bleeding off that airspeed nice and slow. And then we can get another one in, you know, between these. There you go. And just let it ride. Don't feel like you gotta pull back half cyclic too much. Like, there you go. Just let it ride, and voila. All right, and then we can practice one here. Then we won't actually go up. We'll abort it basically as soon as you sort of do the key part of the technique. So in the same task, you're going to see one that says minimum power from a hover. So minimum power takeoff from a hover, VMC takeoff. And basically for that one, you just have hover power. So you don't, right. And so the key with this one is you want to creep in the forward cyclic, because if you do it too aggressively, then the aircraft is just going to nose over and you're going to bump the front landing gear. So it's all about creeping it forward slowly, and obviously leave the power where it is. So creep forward with the cyclic. There you go. Just kind of let it, and watch your altitude, and just let it keep building. There you go. And once you get to about 15 knots, you know you're safe. Like, because that's starting a VTL. And there, and now you can start your decel. And that's all you got to do with that one. That's your minimum power takeoff. Basically you in accordance with the ATM task, you're gonna maintain that level attitude until you accelerate to your minimum airspeed single engine, which you would have from your PPC min-max single engine airspeeds. And so once you cross that threshold, then you can begin your climb. Or some folks, there's nothing that says that you can't accelerate to bucket speed, whatever. You have a runway. Obviously, you have a safe environment. So some folks might want to accelerate to closer to 60, 70 knots before they start their climb. Maybe they sort of accelerate to min-max airspeed, let it climb to like 20, 30 feet, then accelerate to bucket speed, and then set their 500 foot per minute rate of climb. You have that flexibility, but the idea there is that you can do all that and never add any power, just with hover power. Because but the key, when we do a full one here, so if you want to start working our way back to the sort of departure, or the approach end, I should say, when we do a full one, you'll see that something you have to keep track of is as you accelerate, the torque is actually going to show like 53 or 52. So your hover power was 58, so then that means that you can bring in more pitch and get back to that 58, which was safe. You know what I mean? Yeah. Right, exactly. So you had 58% as your hover power torque, but then you went through ETL, so the rotor system got more efficient. So now it's only pulling 52% torque, so you got 6% to sort of add to it. And so basically, as far as a sequence of events, you do the little creeping thing with the collective, you get to your minimum single engine airspeed, then you decide, okay, am I going to start my climb now, or am I going to keep accelerating, allow a smaller climb just to get away from the ground a little bit, but stay IGE and continue to accelerate. And you can do that, and then when you decide sort of when you're going to start your full climb, like climb up to altitude or whatever, that's when typically I would glance there and be like, oh, I got 6 more to play with.
Air taxi to Southeast EOR.
Now if I was doing a takeoff below IGE, in other words, I can't even hover. In that one, my cross check would be bumping up there like a lot earlier, because I need every ounce of torque that I can get. Because there I'm doing a rolling takeoff, and I have to gain airspeed and gain altitude, and I don't have even enough power to come to a hover. So I'm depending on my IGE improvement to give me the power that I need. So that's a different scenario. But in a minimum power takeoff, you can sort of decide when you want to glance up there and bring in whatever margin you've developed, you know. So we have, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. If I have a choice, I will always do a level acceleration to bucket speed, and then set about a 500-foot rate of climb, because then I know I'm not going to bleed off a lot of airspeed, right? So like, you know, but if yeah, I mean, if it's a case where I need to get away from the ground like as fast as possible, then yeah, accelerate to bucket speed, start a climb, bring in the sort of the performance improvement right away, and then just try to, you know, then you try to stay in bucket speed, because that's going to give you your best, you know, your VY, right? So like the best rate of climb, and yeah. But if you have a runway, there's really no reason to ever sort of give up the airspeed, you know. Like, all right, cool. So let's see. So we did from a hover, we did 10% above. We did minimum, and from the ground is the same as from a hover. I mean, I don't think that sort of requires. They're both the same maneuver. It's just in one of them you have to come sort of, you're taking off from the ground, and the other one you're already at a hover. But I think, but they play out the same way. I mean, you gotta keep track of your pressure, counter pressure on the pedals a little bit more when you're coming off the ground. But other than that, there's really not much of a difference there. And then let me see what else. Let me pull task here. And finally,
Tower Dragon 1 clear of 2-1 right and 2-1 left.
Yep. And so, and then it talks about level acceleration, but level acceleration and the limited power takeoff are basically the exact same. It's just that in level acceleration, you're choosing to accelerate. In the limited power takeoff, you don't have a choice. You know, your performance conditions are making that choice for you. So cool. So that's all 4 flavors, right? So we got VMC 10% above from the ground, from a hover, and then we have level acceleration, and then we have minimum power, which is limited to hover power, which involves a level acceleration. You know, it's just the way that they separate it in the task. It's one's the level acceleration, and one is the limited power takeoff. So, cool beans. So we could probably do a full pattern now. Dealer's choice. If you want to try a standard VMC takeoff from the ground, since we're on the ground, that would probably be beneficial. The INU is resetting. It's pretty bad right now. It's like 0.051. Hopefully it... Yeah. Yeah, yeah, hopefully it updates here in a second and gets back to the center. Yeah, I don't see any traffic. Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm like zoomed in all the way. I think maybe I see something, but yeah, it's hard to. Okay, yeah, I'll buy that. Yeah, I mean, you don't have, we don't, you can, like, you can make your left turn way earlier than that. Like, we don't have to. Yeah, yeah, as long as, by the time we get to our airspeed, you're probably clearing these aircraft, and then, yeah.
Nellis Dragon 1 is...
Yeah, we can use 400 feet,
back to Jolly Pad.
but, or not. I mean, so typical diverse, so that's your, the full, so that's the pattern altitude for Army aircraft is 700 feet AGL. The 400 feet is, typically you're not supposed to turn until you reach 400 feet, unless you're doing a standard instrument departure or an obstacle departure procedure, in which case they may give you lower or higher standards. But when there's no other standard, you're supposed to maintain runway heading until 400 feet AGL before you make your turn. But this being a desert and all that stuff, we don't necessarily have to adhere to that. Basically, you're looking for 2,500 feet traffic pattern altitude, and and avoid all obstacles, obviously. But yeah, because I don't know if in order to get up to 400, especially on the level acceleration, it might take a while. On the standard VMC, we'll probably get there just fine. But anyway, we don't have to take like the full length if we don't need it. But I'll let you practice as as sort of in the weeds as you want. As far as that, you can maintain runway heading to 400 feet, then turn, which would be the most correct, or we could abbreviate, and that'd be fine too. So I'll now just basically just demonstrate, and I'll give you any pointers or anything that I pick up on. But yeah, just try to do a few of those VMC departures, and then for the VMC approach, since we're going to do the full pattern, I guess I should just mention real quick. Use, so your flight path vector sort of tells you where the aircraft's going to crash. Like that's what it's telling you. So just try to manipulate that, put it on the approach end wherever you want to land. And then my second thing that I would say is, like, try to get down to 40 or 30 knots, or, like earlier than sort of you would, that it would seem, so that by the time, but then maintain at least, like 25 to 30 knots all the way down to about 80 feet, because we want to get in the habit of not giving up our ETL before we're within IGE. So, so get slow early. I would recommend it. Maybe your skills are, allow you to be a little faster, and that's fine. But at least for me, getting slow early in the approach is beneficial to controlling the approach all the way to the ground. And yeah, and just keep your airspeed in that 25 to 30 range until you're close to 80 feet, so that we're not giving up our ETL advantage before we get the IGE advantage. Awesome. Perfect. So great catch. If you want it to be absolutely correct, but basically we were doing hovering flight earlier, so you could just use that as your hover power check. That 50, 58% or 57%. Like that's what we're in. So we're doing a limited power takeoff, looking good, and yeah, that's really good. Really good sort of altitude and airspeed matching. That was like right on the money. And yeah, there's about your bucket speed, and as you can see, you're climbing really good. You know, like almost 1,000 feet. Yeah, and then, but you don't have to stop your climb. It's just that's when you start your turn. You can. Yeah. Continue. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry if I didn't make that clear yet. But yeah, that's just when you're turning, and you know, as far as procedures, you know, helicopters, we get to do this often. So you just sort of give a little holler, like, you know, midfield crosswind or something like that, just to let everybody know that that you're doing sort of unorthodox traffic pattern, you know. Yeah. And yeah, just, you know, that's fine, and we're fine. Yeah, you're looking at 2,600 feet on the MSL side and 700 or so. So you're looking good on the AGL side. And you know, you got 10 feet, you got 100 feet to play with. So, you know, never chase altitudes like too aggressively. You know, yeah, plus or minus 100 feet. So yeah, so, you know, and plus or minus 10 knots. So no, you know, a lot of folks will sort of, because then if you start chasing aggressively, then you're most likely to blow past it, you know. Okay, and so this is pretty sharp as far as like starting the base leg, which, you know, is fine. You're just gonna land a little. Yeah, you're just gonna land a little down the runway, and that's fine. But I'm just, you know, like if you want to land to the numbers, just, you know, sort of give yourself a little longer downwind. All right. Yep. And then on downwind, you know, I'll give you, if I can find it here. Before landing checks, so weapons ace are safe, ground override ace is turned off, tail wheel is, I'm not seeing the lock. Yep, tail was locked, and parking brake is released, and performance considerations, hovering at 57%. And yeah, just try, you know, like, so this is a shallow angle, you know, like a shallow angle. So 40 knots, I mean, 40 feet, 25 knots. That's, you know, that's good. That's, yeah, that was probably a more aggressive deceleration than, that's what I'm saying, like, no, you'd have to be going a lot faster than that for a true digging in, sort of aerodynamic dig in. But no, it just that's why I was saying, like, try to get your decel in early, so that then you're just kind of holding that 40 knots, and then you get down to like 150 feet, and then you bump it down to like maybe 30 knots, and it's going to feel painfully slow, but it's going to be that nice control descent all the way to the ground. And then once you get below, you know, once you get close to that 80 feet, then you can kind of bump it down to 20 knots, and, you know, you get down to like 30 feet or so, you should be creeping up on like 10 knots or so, and just so you're constantly bringing it back. And I'm also been practicing when you reset your trim, like, hold it down for like a half a heartbeat, you know, like if I hold it down for too long, the aircraft gets all squirrely on me. But if I don't hold it at all, then like you said, those sleeves just get further and further apart.
Jelly pad, epoxy high hovers.
So, you know, it's just something to consider. So maybe let's try it again. Give yourself like that standard airplane 45 degree you know, off your left shoulder kind of, and just do just do it like a old school airplane pattern. So you have time to do these things, and then like make sure you pick a point. Typically, like, you know, the numbers, although this is a taxiway, so we don't have numbers. So maybe pick an intersection or something, and, you know, make sure we're shooting our approach to a particular spot, because that's how we get the best practice, you know. Because if I don't know where exactly you're sort of shooting for, then I can't really sort of give you feedback on, you know, we're probably shallow for that particular spot, or we're too steep for that particular spot, that sort of thing. So, but I mean, it was fine. It was safe. So that's good. Just this is all polishing up, you know, sort of type stuff. So yeah. So let's just go out and do another left traffic. There you go. And that was, you know, that's good attitude control. You sort of blew past 10 degrees for a second, but you already had some altitude, which is, you know, which is fine. And yeah, you gotta, you know, there's bucket speed, there's like 1,000 foot per minute rate of climb, looking great. And as far as trim, since we were talking about it earlier, so you maintain runway trim up to 50 feet, and then above 50 feet, you should try to trim the aircraft, but I don't think they've sorted it out yet, because if you trim the aircraft while you're sort of accelerating, you have to like retrim it anyway. So it's a constant sort of, so I don't know. Hopefully that gets better. Yeah, no, and it's, yep, it's not sort of accurate right now. Hopefully it gets better. And so here's another thing to, little trick. So you got the opposite direction is 029, and if you put 029 between your velocity vector and the lever line, you'll have a perfect wind correction. Yep. So, you know, so you sort of guesstimate where that 29 is. So like right now, that's probably about halfway between the two, right there. And you should be like, if we had a way to look at your track or something, like if you have iPad or, you know, something, you would have seen that your track was probably, yeah, you'll see that your track was probably, you know, right on, like that 029. And yeah, that's why transition symbology is the best. And so yeah. Once you start base, you can start creeping down. We're, you know, like I said, I set it up so that you have time, so you could maintain 700 feet all the way to final, so that you have the angle that you want. And so there's two ways to pick out an angle. So number one is just with the old eyeball and the dash. So if you sort of see the spot where you want to land close to the dash, that's probably that 7 to 12 degree angle that is, you know, a standard VMC landing. Or if you could put Fat Bob where you want to land, right? and then you can glance down at your so like right now, if I look at the flight page, I see that we have a 5-degree descent angle. So if you reduce collective, Fat Bob will go with it, and see, and now we're getting closer to a 10-degree descent angle. You see that? Yep. Yeah. So a helicopter 7 to 12 is normal. Yep. So 10 is right down in the middle. And see, and like right now, this is looking really good. So you got your 35. You could probably start bleeding off a little more airspeed. Just put the donut below the dot, and it'll bleed off nice and smoothly. Then you can start arresting your rate of descent. There you go. And now we're getting into 80. There's 40 feet. There you go. And see, that was a nice gradual decel. And you put it, so you sort of picked out that intersection up high, and that's where we went. See how, and now you're so now you've arrested your rate of descent to a hover, which is fine. Or, sometimes you're going to get into ground effect, and so we're a little short. You tend to be short of your intended point of landing, because we in the simulator tend to bleed off our airspeed sort of before we get to where we're going. In a perfect world, you would sort of get to the point, then sort of bleed off the airspeed, but it's hard. I mean, I know, it just is what it is. But I mean, I think if you come a little short of your spot and then you got to hover over to it, that's fine. That is certainly preferable to overshooting it entirely.
North Tower, Dragon 1 at the Jelly Pad, taxiing to the Jelly Ramp for shutdown.
Yeah. In a perfect world, yeah, it's like 0-0, and I'll tell you, it's a lot easier in real life than it is in this thing, because you got so much more feedback. Like you're picking up on movement, and like the target area will sort of disappear underneath the TADs and stuff, but then so you look left and right. So like an intersection is perfect because you see the intersection off to the side, so you can kind of continue to fly to that point in space, with that lateral reference. Yep. So we can do another one. Dealer's choice on the takeoff style, and then try taking it all the way to the ground. Because I have found that it's kind of a pain to keep your heading sort of correct as you put it on the ground itself. Now that's the case when I'm doing. So I try to do parking brake on landings, so 0-0 to the ground, and that's where I see the sort of the heading getting all squirrely on me. But if you do it with the parking brake off, it's less pronounced, and then you can just hit the brakes after you're on the ground, and it's the same effect. So just something to practice, because it does give you a bit of a different taste, because that last 5 feet the aircraft really doesn't want to give up. It's like it's comfortable at a hover, and so you have to actively push down on the collective to get those last few feet all the way to the ground, because the ground effect on this model is really strong, in my opinion. Yep, or even start climbing. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, no, I mean, try to touch down 0, 0, like you described. Yeah.
No, Sour Dragon 1, the jelly ramp shutting down.
Oh no, you can, like I said, dealer's choice. You can do a standard VMC from the ground, from a hover. Like, I mean, I personally like practicing this because I don't know, it's fun. But you can, you can use, your power as you see fit. I'm not putting limitation. Definitely not at this stage in the training. Yeah, I mean, so I think we are so so 90 is the traditional, pattern, airspeed, whatever. But I mean, you can try, again, you're just developing your sort of your repertoire. I'm just trying to give you more tools for the toolbox. Yeah. So probably like 50% torque will give you 90 knots on the money. So 100, maybe try 55 and keep a level attitude. Oh no, so yeah, so 70 knots for the Huey, but for this one we do 90 for, for this kind of stuff. And instruments, same thing. So like in the Huey, you would do 70 knots for your instrument flying, but here, and as you can see, yeah, 50% torque is giving you right about 90 knots, level attitude. Not a lot of, not a lot of guesswork. It's just there's these like airspeed and torque combos that are pretty reliable. And then like, so we're 029. There's not a lot of distance between velocity vector and lubber line, so 029 is fine. If it was split, then you would do that trick that I said, put it in the middle, and that's a little technique there. Just sort of what was I gonna say? Like trim sort of almost no slow, because if you add an input without thinking, it's probably going to be half cyclic. So that's always helpful. And then your base now, so like basically you could probably maintain this altitude, get yourself on final. You could bleed off airspeed though. That's up to you. But it's like as soon as you turn base, you can start kind of a gradual bleeding off of the airspeed, and then like, so from the front seat, right? So I'm looking at it from my front seat kind of view. I would say that right about there, without looking at Fat Bob or anything like that, that's a normal VMC approach. And now that you put Fat Bob where he goes, I'm looking down at my flight page and it confirms it. And all I did is that I put that intersection right above the dashboard. You know what I mean? Like, not touching it, like a hair's away from the dashboard. And that's typically simple enough. Now, like, what's going to happen is this time, when you get down to like 150 feet or so, it's going to be impossible to keep the dashboard from obscuring your point of landing. Sort of just let it happen naturally, and it should be happening at about 150, 120 feet or so. Just let it happen naturally, and then just shift your sort of view to that taxiway, and then you're just sort of like putting your ass on the ground where that taxiway intersects that imaginary point. So see, like right about here, see how you had to sort of give it forward cyclic to see where you want to land? Just shift your eyeballs. Yeah, 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 yep. And it's looking good, yeah. Just keep your eyeball to the right, and then there you are. Now, at this point, you ignore Fat Bob, and very good. Like you just went hover symbology, and that gets rid of him entirely. Fat Bob is great, like above 30 knots or so. And yeah, so like as you can see, we still kind of shot short of the spot, and that's and that's fine. Like I mean, that's just I do the same thing still on the simulator. It's like, but the goal is to sort of you let your intended point of landing sort of hide underneath the aircraft, but you sort of still manage the approach path to where you sort of land. You have a lateral reference that tells you, okay, that was my point of intended landing, and that's something you can develop with training, self-training and stuff like that over time. And yeah, it's oh, you just beat me to it. I just saw it. Uh-huh. Yeah, and so because what ends up happening, the reason why it goes away is, yes, yeah. So two things. Yeah, you do have a better view back there, so you could probably see it almost all the way to the ground. But that last 80, that last few feet, it's probably going to go underneath the aircraft, but because you will have decelerated, and that's why at a hover, this thing hangs tail low, like really pronounced. And so the same thing is happening in reverse. You're slowing down, so your tail is getting ever lower, which raises your nose and hides your intended point of landing. But yeah, in the back you can see it for a much longer period of time. And then in the front, if you want to sort of quote unquote cheat, you can always go to the utility page and select NOE approach on the FMC side, on the left side. So LSK 6, I guess. Yeah. So that will drive the stabilator down and give you more sort of forward clearance. Now, by driving that stabilator down, it'll increase the drag quite a bit. So it's going to act like an air brake. So then it becomes more important for you to sort of maintain track of your airspeed so that you don't get below ETL prematurely. But that's a technique. Honestly, I don't think it's necessary. I never used it in the real aircraft. And here, even in the front seat, even though it's a little tricky, I guess if you use that lateral reference technique, it tends to be good enough to get you close to the point of intended landing, Yeah. I mean, if you had, yeah. I mean, it's like a discretion thing. But I honestly, I mean, that's what it's for, right? So NOE approach, but we really didn't use it much, because it does increase the drag quite a bit. So then you have to apply more forward cyclic just to maintain airspeed, and it can feel a little sort of abnormal, but it's an option, it's something there. And you could also just man stave all day long, you could nose down, nose up, and there's no, at the airspeeds, at approach airspeeds, you're never gonna bust an airspeed, so you can always use the manual stabilator to sort of, if you can't see something, you can maybe get a little bit of help with it. But honestly, especially from the back seat, it shouldn't really be necessary, because like you said, you were able to maintain visual with the landing site pretty much the whole way. I would say that, yeah. The fact that we landed short of it shows you that you at about 100 feet, you should just trade it. You should intentionally let it go away under the aircraft, because the fact that we landed short of it means that's why it was visible the whole time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of like, it's just, and that'll come with some practice, but it's, like I said, this is obvious, this is a landing that is perfect, because you can always hover, like let's say we were short of the pavement, you can always hover to the pavement, but like if there's let's say there was a intersecting runway down the line, and we blew past our spot, and incursion the intersecting runway, that we can't fix. You can always hover forward to where you sort of want to put your wheels, but if you blow past it, you can't really fix it, because then you gotta like hover backwards, or it just, so I guess if I had to pick, I would always pick short of my intended point. Yeah, and I'll tell you, here's the thing, like when you're landing at FOBs, you don't shoot a constant descent angle type approach. You know what I mean? Like you might shoot a constant descent angle type approach to the altitude at which you're going to cross the FOB, perimeter walls and stuff like that. But basically, the way we did it in Iraq was, so if we were up at like 1,500 feet or something, we would shoot an approach angle to like 50 feet, which is typically what we use to cross the T-walls, because the T-walls were about 30 feet high, so 50 feet gave you some buffer. And then you just hold 50 feet level. You do the bob-up box thing that we talked about through Discord, or you have some visual reference. Maybe you have guys on the ground or whatever, and then once you are over your intended landings, they give you a signal or something, and then you're just going to bring it straight down. So in a confined area, you're typically not going to sort of shoot a standard sort of constant descent approach, Yeah. It's same concept, clearing in the forest, like there's no reason to try to sort of like nail this, like put the bullseye, when you can easily just descend to treetop level and then come forward, and the thing is, tactically, a constant descent angle approach is like basically you're hanging out your ass to get shot. You know what I mean? It's the least tactical way you can do things. So like you said earlier, you either want to be high or you want to be low, because there's a trade-off there. Like if I'm low, I can get shot by bullets, but I'm probably not going to get shot by a missile. If I'm high, I can get shot by a missile, but I'm probably not going to get shot by bullets. But if you're in the middle at like, if you're hanging around like 200 feet or so, you're basically just giving at low airspeed, you know what I mean? You're giving everybody the best of both worlds, So Yeah. Yeah. You know, if I was going into a confined area, yeah, get down to treetop level. Like, you know, maybe do a high recon and then set myself up on a little pattern, get down to treetop level. I see the opening open in front of me. I look at the, you know, I'm crossing the trees. Okay, drop a box, drop another box, and then come straight down, you know. I mean, not necessarily straight down, but down into the clearing. You know, versus like I'm up at 1,000 feet and I'm trying to sort of you know, sort of ride this, you know, this, you know, like line all the way to the ground. And I'm going to be hanging out in avoid areas, you know. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we pretty much banged out everything we could probably do today. You know, I'm really impressed with, you know, your proficiency. Like I definitely will sign off all these tasks for today. Luckily, we had time on our side. I'd encourage you to, you know, like still sort of dig into the aerodynamics topics, and maybe we could talk about them next time, either with me or whomever, because they're worth sort of having a good understanding of. Same thing with the PPC. Just keep studying for the cruise data that's coming up next. And let's see. Let me look at my notes here just to make sure. Yeah. And then, like I said, the other task for today was the AAR debrief, which, you know, just kind of look through it and then just think, okay, if I had to debrief, what kind of questions would I ask folks? You know, what would be important information to sort of to get down as far as like the flight. Like, you know, in real life, it always boils down to like, does anyone have anything for the flight? You know, like this like really broad, like useless, you know, checking the box. But yeah, it's just, you know, especially for us, like AAR comments are going to be what shapes the program and makes it better. So yeah, I mean, if you want to reposition us, you could. I mean, if you want to do something again, I'm still game for a little bit longer, but I think we could probably head back over to Jolly. It's up to you. Oh yeah, yeah. Let's just take it all the way home, hover taxiing, and that'll. But I mean, like based on what I saw, you're gonna have no problem. That's why I didn't really. No, I didn't want to like belabor it because I, you know, just if you can transition from forward flight to a nice stable hover, which you did, then everything else should be like that. That's kind of like my litmus test right now, because yeah, that's what I, in my opinion, you know, based on what I've done, this thing is most squirrely at. It's like that transition. Same thing with transitioning from your approach angle to a hover, which you did very well. Again, it's a litmus test because yeah, the way this flight model is right now, it's actually just very. You have to be very. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, you have to be very deliberate to get it done, and it has to kind of come through practice. Whereas in the real aircraft, in the real world, you could sort of do it by feel, you know? You can't really do that here, so. Yeah. Yeah, I can get us over there. Let's see what, let me get back up to.
Dallas
Tower, Dragon 2-1 at Golf Taxiway. We hover taxiing back to the Jolly Pad via approach end 2-1 left, 2-1 right. I don't have the airfield diagram memorized, but that should get people close enough. No, yeah. Right, yeah, this is kind of like, these lines are sort of, you come off the main taxiway. Yeah, no, yeah, you just go to whatever, to the so there's arming and dearming pads, and you just go there. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's the line, yeah. Nellis traffic, Dragon 2-1, crossing 2-1 left. At Echo. Nellis traffic. Cool. Yeah, I honestly, actual flights like that have, multi-crew flights like this, I think this might only be like my 7th or my 8th. Yeah, I just kind of like, most of my work has been, documents and crap like that. Sort of, yeah. Yep. Nellis Tower, Dragon 2-1, clear 2-1 left, crossing 2-1 right on Echo. Yeah. Which is weird, cause like that's how we were talking about the other day. Like, that's like really not a thing with helicopters. Like opposite direction. Nellis Tower, Dragon 2-1 is clear, 2-1 right at Echo. Like, but I guess when you have twin power plants, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not just that, like, you got jets that can, like, push afterburners and shit like that, It's like, that 10 knots difference is not going to mean much. But with helicopters, yeah, we're always stressing about wind and... Right. Yeah. And then Foxtrot connects or doesn't? It connects to the Jolly Ramp as well, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, okay. Maybe this was called something else before. Yeah, I think these two, I think, both go to the Jolly Ramp, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, there's no, because they'll have chains on, and they'll have blade tie downs and all that. So yeah. I'm curious to see if the blades will move when we hover past it. Yeah, nothing happened. That'd be cool though. Yeah, see, nothing to it. You're using your hover symbology to keep your tail behind you, like, so like right now you're basically straight up and down, and so you're all good. If it was leaning to the right, then your tail's a little let's see, if it was leaning to the right, your tail should be a little left, right? Yeah, exactly. So whichever way it creates sort of adrift. And so then, yeah, so that if it's to the left, then your tail's left, and straight up and down, you know, nose and tail are crossing the same piece of real estate. You know what? I didn't really. We were closer to that end though. Yeah. Yeah, that would be. Yeah. Yeah, so I wouldn't even do it. I would just sort of drift left and, you know, slide left before I made my turn. Yeah. Yeah, or just, yeah, like you're doing right now, just slide left, sort of get yourself some buffer. Cause yeah, no, I wouldn't play around with that in real life or digital. You can see the problem. There's no point in hoping it won't be an issue, you know. Just make it a non-issue, you know. There you go. Cool beans. Alright, after landing, tail wheel's locked, exterior lights can stay as they are, avionics are as required. Alright, I'll start my shutdown, yep. Yeah, so if we had been ground taxiing, you wouldn't have to do that because the engines would have been below. I can't remember. Below the NG value that is like the cutoff. But then, since we were hover taxiing, we were using, you know, like full engine power. So then the clock starts when you sort of go to when you stop. So yeah, so we got APU. But once the APU's on, then yep, so that's all good. I was gonna say, like, just to make sure that we're on the same page, I had to look down to see that the power levers are at idle. So it's 2 minutes at idle or ground taxi. But you know, I might be conflating some Blackhawk stuff. That might not be a thing in the Apache, actually, now that I think about it. So it's just at 2 minutes at idle, not. I don't think there's a. Because if there was a NG, it would tell it to you there, and it doesn't. So I'm pretty sure there's no such thing. Yeah, that must be you know, multiple airframes. Sometimes things get jumbled in my head. It'll be cool when everything gets implemented. I was just seeing like rotor brake, like we'll be able to do lock starts, which right now we can't because the rotor brake doesn't really go into lock, but once it does. Yeah, for the boats. Yep, exactly, because that's that you're not sort of in that in-between space. You're going from no rotation to pretty much full rotation. Yeah. Alrighty. So don't use your collective, just use your rotor brake. Yeah. No, yeah. It's like yeah, just 50% NR or below, rotor brake comes on. And here it gets down to 50% NR so fast that really the moment you go to idle, like by the time you get your hand over to your rotor brake, it'll be there. Cause yeah, like it bleeds off like really fast. Like so, like you go from like in the real aircraft, you had to wait. You had to keep your eye on the NR, and then once it was below 50%, you could bring the rotor brake. But here, like it's like you power levers are off, and you're basically below 50% NR, like so. And yeah, and then rotor brake and works great. Yeah, that's it. All right. I'll meet you at